Hi, I'm Alicia. Welcome to GenTales, where genealogy meets history. This video on a martyr of superstition, Susannah North Martin, a convicted witch of Salem, was originally published on GenTales on Substack, and that is linked in the text below this video, and any of the other links that I talk about in this video can be found there. Today, I want to talk about my 9th great-grandmother on my maternal side, Susannah North Martin. She was hanged as a witch in Salem, Massachusetts, and I read an interesting perspective on the witch trials recently in the Historian here on Substack. And I'll link it in the text below this video, along with the resources to read more about the lineages involved. The Historian article addressed how we tend to overlook the women who contributed to the downfall of other women in the context of the witch trials. The examinations were done by women, and so the supporting evidence for conviction was most likely provided by other women. How did society decide which women were beyond reproach? It's an interesting topic, and Susannah's daughter-in-law is thought to have contributed to her demise, which makes it all the more interesting when I read that. But I'll get to that. Let's talk about my 9th great-grandmother.
Susannah North was born in 1621 in England to Richard North and Joan Bartram North. She came to Massachusetts with her father around 1640, where she met George Martin.
George Martin was born likely about 1618.
He was a blacksmith and came to Massachusetts from England about 1639 under the employment of Samuel Winsley. His first wife, Hannah, died in 1645, about a year after their marriage and birth of one child. Susannah and George married August 11, 1646 in Salisbury, Massachusetts. Around 1655, they moved to Amesbury, as it would be named in 1667, and were some of the first settlers there. They lost at least 2 children in infancy, but had 6 surviving children born between 1647 and 1667, and it is thought that Susannah cared for George and Hannah's daughter.
Susannah Martin of Amesbury, Massachusetts was not well liked. She was accused and gossiped about for 30 years. She was considered forthright and argumentative, even among her own family. She unsuccessfully sued her stepmother 6 times for her father's estate, and it eventually went to her sister Mary. There are also anecdotes about her eldest sons having legal trouble with her, and everything from domestic violence to love triangles with their wives. Her husband always stood up for her virtue. She was specifically accused of being a witch in 1661 and 1669. Both times the charges were dropped, presumably because of her husband's influence. The 1669 accusations included fornication and killing her own infant. George took the accuser, William Sargent, to court for slander. Though Susannah was cleared of the non-witchcraft charges, she actually had to appeal for the witchcraft charges to be dropped. George Martin died in 1686, 6 years before the Salem witch hysteria. During the fervor of the witch trials in nearby Salem, Susannah's outspoken nature towards her neighbors and history of accusations made the widow an easy target for allegations.
On April 30th, 1692, Thomas Putnam and Jonathan Walcott swore a complaint against her regarding accusations by Mary Walcott, Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam, and Mercy Lewis that Goody Martin was a witch. A couple of days later, Amesbury Constable Orland Bagley escorted her the 20 miles to Salem Village for examination. She treated her examiners with contempt and is on record as having laughed at her accusers. When asked about her compassion for the girls' fits, she called them folly and confessed no compassion for the afflicted. She refused to confess to practicing witchcraft, and she spent most of May jailed in Boston before being brought back to Salem to await trial.
At least 9 neighbors and as many as 24 testified against her at her trial. The evidence that she was a witch was that
she caused a man's oxen to drown itself after a bad deal between the farmer and her late husband. Her specter stalked a farmhand. She bit a man's hand. She drove a neighbor's wife mad. She traveled on foot from Amesbury to Newbury during a dirty season without getting her clothing wet, and she was seen participating in satanic rituals.
She wasn't allowed counsel, and she was tried and convicted by Cotton Mather on June 29th. Mather is quoted as calling her an
impudent, scurrilous, wicked creature. She was sentenced to death and hanged at Gallows Hill on July 19th alongside Sarah Good, Elizabeth Howe, Rebecca Nurse, and Sarah Wilds. They were buried in a shallow, unmarked grave.
As expected, she was argumentative to the end. Susannah held tightly to her Bible and held the line that she had led a virtuous and holy life. Quote, She's said to have told her accusers that they were the ones under the influence of Satan. Her family didn't sign on to the 1711 petition to the Massachusetts legislature that offered restitution. Whether they were unaware of it or simply thought she really was a witch, it's unclear. A number of families didn't sign it. It wasn't until 1945 that a bill was put forth by the descendants of one of the remaining women to clear the names of any remaining Salem witches. The resolution was passed by the Massachusetts legislature in 1957, but it didn't name the additional victims. So in October 2001, Susannah Martin was finally cleared of all charges of witchcraft. There's a marker at the former site of the Susannah Martin house at the end of Martin Road in Amesbury.
It is inscribed, "An honest, hard-working Christian woman accused as a witch, tried, and executed at Salem, July 19, 1692, a martyr of superstition."